ahead with a 10-minute lesson. Not first, after. There'll be plenty of time. Okay. And again, this may seem basic, and it is, but I don't know where all the holes are and what you understand, so we're going to do it anyways. I know when we get to the part which is adding and subtracting fractions, that we have issues with that. Because I guarantee I couldn't give my pre-calculus class a problem that had some significant fractions in it, and they wouldn't have trouble with it, right? Because we just don't teach fractions that well. So again, I'll go through this. I'm not an elementary school teacher, right? I don't know how they teach this stuff in elementary school, but this is from the Algebra 1 book. Basically, if you think of it in terms of a number line, and sometimes I do, right? You think of it 3 plus 5 on a number line. If you're starting at 3 and adding 5, which direction are you going? Right, right. If you say plus, I mean, bigger numbers are to the right, lesser numbers are to the left. I want to go more than 3. That means I'm going to the right. So when you add a positive number plus a positive number, you're going to get another positive number. It's only going more to the right. If you take the last one, negative 3 plus negative 5, right? Negative 3 means to the left of 0. If I add a negative number, that means I'm going to be going to the left, right? Adding a positive number goes to the right. Adding a negative number goes to the left. If you start negative and go further negative, the result is negative, always. So plus plus a plus is positive. A negative plus a negative is negative, always, right? When is it not always the same? If you've got one is positive and one is negative, and then what is going to determine whether or not the result is positive or negative? 3 plus negative 5, is that going to be negative or positive? Why negative? Because the bigger number, in a way you say the bigger number, but negative 5 is less than 3, right? What you really mean is the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, right? The absolute value of that number is bigger than that, so that means it'll be negative. It is bigger. We're not going to say that every time, but you're right. The bigger of the two is negative, so the result should be negative. So if you start at 3 and you go negative, you go 5 to the left, right? After 3, you're at 0, and then you got another 2 to go, and so the result is negative 2. Right? How about negative 3 plus 5? Is it going to be positive or negative? Positive, right? Because you're starting at a negative 3, but the 5 is going to take you beyond 0. You're going to go right 3 to get to 0 and right another 2 to get to 2. So in terms of a number line, that's how it works. Most of us don't deal with number lines. Let's go through these quickly. Negative 12 plus 7, is it going to be positive or negative? Negative, and what will be the answer? So essentially what you're doing is this. You're saying 12 minus 5, edit, undo. 12 minus 7 is 5. And then, because the bigger number was negative, you stick a negative in front of it. It is a subtraction that you're doing at that point. But the result will be negative because the bigger of the two was negative. How about negative 18 plus negative 2? Is it going to be negative or positive? Negative, right? You're starting negative and you're going even more negative. So are you going to add or subtract these numbers? I mean, if I just take the 18 and 2, what am I going to do to those? I'm going to add them, right? I'm going to get 20. But because they were both negative, it'll be negative 20. So when they have the same sign, you just add them up and repeat the sign. How about decimals? Is this going to be positive or negative? The bigger of the two is positive, so it will be a positive number. And what operation do I need to do between 9.5 and 4.8? I'm going to subtract. Because they're opposite sign, I will subtract. Okay? Please don't talk when I'm up here, right? So subtract. How do we subtract? I mean, it's decimal form. I should just say, because there's no other way to say it, it's important that the decimals lined up, right? In this case, we've got the same kind of decimals, right? It's tenths and tenths. But how do I subtract 5 minus 8? Say again? Yeah, I mean, what do we usually say? We say borrow, right? We're going to borrow a 1 from the 9. That's going to make that an 8, and then make that a 1. So 15 minus 8 is 7. What is 7 plus 8? Again, if you're not sure, look at it. Think of it as a number line, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? If I start at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right there, right? And I add 1, 2, 3, that'll get me to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that'll get me to 15. So that is 8 plus 8, 15. Okay, now 8 minus 4 is 4. So this is positive 4.7. Okay, fractions. How do we add fractions? What's that? Okay. So you're saying I should do 6 over 14. You add the numerator straight across, okay? Sometimes. In this case, can I just add the numerators? Yeah, why can I just add the numerators? Because they have the same denominator, right? If they don't have a common denominator, you're going to have to do something to make it a common denominator. But if they do have the same denominator, then just add the numerators. Think of it like, 2 apples plus 4 apples, 6 apples. It's still the same thing, right? The 7 doesn't change. Okay, well, what if it doesn't have the same denominator? What's that? Nope. Cross multiplies when you're solving an equation. It's a proportion. So how do you find the common denominator? Okay, well, what's that? Yeah, we need a common denominator. This is like saying, 4 apples and 2 oranges. You can't put them together, right? We got to find the common, what's in common between them? They're fruit. Okay, in this case, we're looking for what is literally called the least common multiple. What is the lowest number that has both 5 and 7 as a multiple? Say again? No, 7 does not divide into 5. What's the lowest number that both of those divide into? Here's a clue. You can always just multiply the two together, right? If you did 5 times 7, that would give you a denominator of 35, okay? Does 5 divide into 35? Of course, right? Does 7 divide into 35? Of course. So that will be a common denominator for those two. Is it going to be the least common denominator? Is it the lowest number we could have found in this case? It is. It is, okay? Now, how do I change this 4/5 so that it has the same denominator as that? What do I multiply by? 7, right? So I multiply this one by 7 over 7. What am I going to multiply that one by? 5 over 5. Right? So now this is negative 4 times 7 is 28 over 35 plus 2 times 5 is 10 over 35. Okay, now they have the same common denominator. You can add them up. Is this result going to be positive or negative? Negative because the 28 is bigger than the 10, right? So we need to do this kind of operation. What is 28 minus 10? 18. So this is going to be negative 18 over 35. So if you cannot find the common denominator in any other way, multiplying the two numbers is going to find you a common denominator. Now, it may not find you the least common denominator, right? What if I just multiplied these two together? What would I get as a common denominator? 24. But is that the least number that both 4 and 6 divide into? Can you think of a number less than 24? It's actually 12, right? So the way that works, if you wanted to find the least common denominator, what you would do is you would factor the denominators into their prime factors. Like 3/4 would become 3 over 2 times 2, 2 squared. And 6 would become 2 times 3. Now, you would expect that the least common denominator would have every factor that you see in either denominator the most times that you see it. So let's see, there should be a 2 in it, and there should be a 3 in it. And then because the 2 is squared here, it has to be squared here. Okay, so actually, that's going to give us a least common denominator of 4 times 3, 12. Now, most of the time, if you know your multiplication tables well, you're probably not going through this process. If I just asked you, what is the lowest number that both 4 and 6 divide evenly into, if you know your multiplication tables, you would have said 12 without going through any kind of a process. But that is the process if you didn't know your multiplication tables well. I hope we will by the time this is all done. Okay, now that I've found the least common denominator, what am I going to multiply the first term by? So that it has the same common denominator, right? 3/4. We need to make the denominator here a 12. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3. And what am I going to multiply this by? 2 over 2. Okay. Now I'm going to go down here. So this will be 3 times 3, 9 12. And this will be 5 times 2, which will be plus negative 10 12. Is that going to be positive or negative? Right? The bigger of the two is negative. So we're going to do 10 minus 9 is 1. And because the bigger was negative, it'll be negative 1 12. So common denominators, that is a thing. You know, there's only like 5 or 6 things that I want to get out of this class, and one is that we do better with fractions. Okay, these, see if we can do these pretty much by inspection. Negative 6 plus negative 8. Positive or negative? It's going to be negative, right? Negative plus a negative is a negative. Go ahead. All right. Got it? I don't know what that is. That is yours. Well, and not here. Okay. So what was the first one? Negative plus a negative is going to be a negative. 16 plus 8 is 24. Okay, how about a negative 11 plus 9? It's going to be negative or positive? Negative, right? 11 minus 9 is 2, so it would be negative 2. How about 9 plus negative 11? I mean, is there any difference between these two? That's commutative property, right? Order doesn't matter. It's still negative 2. How about the negative 6 plus negative 2? Negative 8. Okay, subtracting is like adding a negative. So when you see something like negative 3 minus 5, you could convert that, if you wanted to use the rules for addition, to 3 plus negative 5, and then you just do what we did before. I mean, eventually you wouldn't do that. You'd just look at the 3 minus 5 and do the right thing, right? 3 minus negative 5. Remember, if you minus a negative, that's a positive. That's like, that changes to a plus. Minus a negative is a plus. So how do I rewrite this one as an addition? Negative 8 plus 13, which is, right? It's going to be positive, but because they're both different signs, you do 13 minus 8, 5. So we're actually using subtraction when I do that, but not good. How about 3.5 minus 12.4? Change it to an addition. Change that to an addition. 3.5 plus negative 12.4. I mean, that's the definition of subtraction. Right? I think most of the time you'd be given this and actually want to go backwards like that. But is this going to be positive or negative? Negative. Please be quiet when I'm up here. Right? I give detentions easily. I'm here every day after school. Every day. I'll give them a week at a time. Right? So we need to subtract 12.4 minus 3.5. Okay, we're going to have to do the borrowing thing again, right? 4 minus 5, can't do, so I borrow 1 from this. That'll make that an 11. That'll make that a 14. 14 minus 5 is 9. 11 minus 3 is 8. And because the bigger one of the two was negative, that's negative 8.9. How about this one? Change it to an addition problem. Minus a negative means plus. So 4.8 plus 8.7. 8 plus 7, 15. 1 plus 4 plus 8, 13. Where does the decimal place go? Right there. And last one, fractions. Change it to an addition problem first, and then we'll worry about denominators. 4/9 plus 2/3. Okay, now what is going to be the least common denominator between 9 and 3? 9, right? Not 3. 9 does not divide into 3. 3 divides into 9. So the least common denominator is the bigger number, 9. Okay, what do I multiply this first one by so that it has the same common denominator as that? What fraction am I going to multiply? 3 over 3. Right? Why can I do that? Because what is the value of 3 over 3? It's 1. So really what we're doing is we're just multiplying times 1. So that we know 1 times anything is the same thing, identity property. So this will be 4/9 plus 6/9 equals 10/9. Okay. So the homework out of the workbook are these: addition and subtraction.